Now that Donald Trump is asking the court, what will the justices do?
Well, what he's asking for is a stay, meaning to put the whole case on ice while he tries to appeal the ruling of the D.C. Circuit. My feeling is the same as Mr. Cobb's. I just don't see the Supreme Court staying this action for a number of reasons. One, as he said, Mr. Cobb said, this is an extremely well-reasoned opinion. It goes over 57 pages. There's really not much more to say. They really took real care in analyzing and addressing every single issue that was raised by Donald Trump. I mean, the bottom line is there's really nothing to this issue. I mean, back in Watergate, for example, nobody ever thought that Richard Nixon had immunity from prosecution. That was never something that we even gave one instant of thought to. Secondly, I think Donald Trump's timing here is bad. It's terrible in the sense that they already have this case that they had no choice but to take on the 14th Amendment as to whether or not Donald Trump is barred from appearing on the ballot because of his involvement in the insurrection. I think the last thing this Supreme Court wants is to get more involved in the presidential election in 2024, that they're not going to be looking to do this. And they've already got problems up to their eyeballs with the 14th Amendment. So it doesn't seem to me they're going to have the appetite to take this. And on top of it, there's also the option that they have if and when Donald Trump is convicted in the District of Columbia case, which I think is highly likely, they'll have another opportunity to address this issue on appeal.
Okay, so Nick, let's talk about that, because if, as you say, the court decides not to stay this, to allow the trial to be rescheduled and proceed as normal, what kind of timeline would we be looking at in that scenario, not just for the trial to begin, but actually the duration of it, knowing that it is just Trump who is a defendant in this case? There's only 4 counts that he's been charged with by Jack Smith. How long would the actual trial process, ultimately a verdict, and then a conviction sentencing actually take, knowing that the election is coming in November?
Well, first of all, the sentencing always occurs some 3 months after the conviction. So what we're looking at in terms of the trial and the actual verdict, we're probably looking at about 4 to 6 weeks. It's not a very complicated case. It's mainly made up of various witnesses and tape recordings of Donald Trump. It's going to take some time, but it's a lot easier than some of these other cases like the classified document case or the RICO case in Georgia, where Trump is the only defendant. I think if, as I suspect, the Supreme Court denies cert on this, meaning they will not take the appeal, they will not grant the stay, I think what we're going to see is that the case will be set down sometime maybe in mid-April. That will give Alan Bragg the opportunity to go ahead on I believe it's March 25th that the trial is scheduled to go. That's a 3-week trial. So they could go right from that trial right into the District of Columbia. So I think that's probably what we're looking at this point.
So that timeline would suggest then that Alvin Bragg, I think if I understand you correctly, Mr. Akerman, Alvin Bragg gets the first crack here. That will be the first trial. And you've gone out of your way to make the point that could be much more important for Donald Trump's legal future and political future than a lot of folks have made that out to be. Many have spent time questioning the legitimacy of that case.
No, that's a very solid case. I mean, what people are overlooking is the fact that this case is about election interference again. It's about Donald Trump concealing information from the voting public in 2016 that if they had known about, he would have likely have lost. So it's really not that much different than what you've got in 2020, where Donald Trump basically lies to stay in power and comes up with a big lie that the election was rigged. So in a sense, both of these are related. And if you were to go in chronological order, it would make sense to do the Alvin Bragg case first.
Well, and of course, we've now talked about two of the felony cases the former president is facing. There's two others, one in Georgia and one in Florida. In the documents case that has come to front of mind in light of the release yesterday of the DOJ's report on President Biden's handling of classified documents, Special Counsel Robert Hur did not charge the president with anything, even though he said he willfully retained classified documents, knowing that 31 counts that Trump is charged with in Florida are willful retention of national security information. Do you think the fact that Biden wasn't charged on those counts could have implications for that case? We're talking 31 of the 91 felonies that Trump is charged with.
Absolutely there's no similarity between the two. And also, I might add, if you read through that opinion, the special counsel concludes that there was not willful retention of these documents in several places in that report. But this is completely apples and oranges. Donald Trump lied. He basically obfuscated. He obstructed the FBI from getting these documents. He had his attorneys lie. I mean, the real problem that Donald Trump has in that case in Florida is his obstruction of justice count. That's what really puts it over the top. If he had simply, right from the get-go, had given all those documents back and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize," and just turned them all over, but he didn't do that. Instead, he had his lawyers lie. He had his employees lie. He hid documents. That's a whole different case. Joe Biden came forward. He produced the documents. He told the government he had them. It's a completely different situation.